Hey everybody, this is section 10-2 on congruent triangles. And the first thing I want to direct your attention to is the title is called Congruent Triangles, but the vocabulary is always important in any section. So we have two words, two vocabulary, the word congruent, which we have learned before. This word congruent is basically like saying equals, but instead of putting an equal sign, you put an equal sign with a squiggly, and so that is called a congruent symbol. All right, so congruent triangles. And then you also have the other vocabulary term here called corresponding parts. And so I'm going to get into what those are. So I'm going to stop right there. I'm in this top section here where it has the yellow words. Says the figures have the same size. Figures that have the same size and shape are congruent. So this could be angles can be congruent, sides, line segments, triangles, quadrilaterals, squares, any type of shape. Hexagons can be congruent hexagons. So the word congruent is used all the time. And then the second sentence in here is saying the parts of congruent triangles that match are corresponding parts. All right, so what we're trying to identify here in each of these is, I'm looking in the box, we have congruent angles and we have congruent sides. All right, so as you look at this, one thing is that angle X is congruent to angle P. And so what you should notice is that they both have one arc. And then you should notice that angle Y is congruent to angle Q. Both of those have two arcs. And then the same goes for the third pair of angles, the third corresponding pair of angles. Angle Z has three arcs and angle R has three arcs because they're congruent. They're the same sized angle, right? And so as we continue, we also have congruent sides. So we know that line segment XY is congruent to line segment PQ. And so what you'll notice is that line has three dashes on it. PQ has three dashes on it. So you can say XY, or you can say YX, PQ, or QP for line segments. It doesn't matter which order. And the second pair of corresponding sides is that line segment YZ, or ZY, is congruent to line segment QR. And so what you should notice here is that QR has one red dash and YZ has one red dash on them. So one dash to one dash means that they're congruent. They're the same length. And then the third pair of corresponding sides is XZ and PR. And they both have two dashes. And so those are three pairs of corresponding angles, three pairs of corresponding sides. And when they're all congruent and all pairs match, then these are congruent triangles. Okay. And just to continue to the next page here, using the same information, we have that I'm going to read from up here. It says, when writing a congruent statement, the letters must be written so that corresponding vertices, which is vertexes in plural. Vertexes is not the right word. They say vertices, it's the vertex points. In other words, the angles, right? Angle G, you can also say that's vertex G. But the vertices appear in the same order. So example is that triangle FGH is congruent to triangle JKM. And so they have to be in order. F is the first letter, J is the first letter. And if they're going to be the first letter, then they should be the same angle measure. So they both have one arc. And then G is the second letter, and K is the second letter. And as you can see, both of those have two arcs, and that should match, right? If the second letters are G and K, then those angle measures should also be congruent, since it's telling us triangle FGH is congruent to triangle JKM. And then the third letter is H, should match M. And as you can see, both of those have three arcs, and so it matches perfectly. It also shows you that kind of diagram right there with the red, blue, and green arrows. All right, so we're going to move forward. Example 1, name corresponding parts. And so in the name corresponding parts in the congruent triangle shown, then complete the congruence statement. So it's asking that you take this information here, just by looking at the shapes, write a congruence statement. This thing down here is called a congruence statement. Triangle ABC is congruent to what other triangle? Well, if angle A is first, it has one arc. Angle Z should be first in there. And also the symbol for triangle. And then B is the second letter. It has 2 arcs. And Y has 2 arcs, so Y should be the second letter. Angle C is the last letter. It has 3 arcs, and it should match the letter that has 3 arcs in the other shape, which is X. So as you can see, that answer is exactly what I just shared with you there. Now, moving down. Trying to get this thing figured out as I'm using it. That kind of works. Those are the 2 shapes that we're talking about. I was wanting to erase that line, but I'll leave it there. So example 2, determine whether the triangles shown are congruent. If so, name the corresponding parts and write a congruence statement. And so all you're doing here is matching the information, right? So we have 1 arc for S and 1 arc for W. So when you write this congruent statement, S should be in one triangle and W should be in the other triangle, right? Triangle S, and then we'll write a couple more letters with triangle W. And then I'm going to go across to the side that has 2 arcs, or the angle, which is angle T. And across here, that would be angle U, has 2 arcs. So T in this triangle should match U in the other triangle. And so the angles are matching. The other thing you got to keep in mind is the sides should also match. So 24 should match 24, the length across that triangle. And then from T, we're going to go to R, which is across the 20. And then as you can see in the other shape, we're at U, going to V, it's across the 20 meters also. And so it goes to R, which is 3 arcs. And in the other shape, it goes to V, which is 3 arcs. And then the last thing you're checking is the last side congruent? It is 16. The last side in that triangle is also 16. So in matching, now when you get up into high school geometry, or even later on in the year, you're going to see that there's shortcuts to determining if 2 triangles are congruent. But in our situation right now, are all 3 sides, side lengths matching the 3 sides in the other triangle? Are all 3 angles matching? And as long as you have 3 pairs of sides, 3 pairs of angles that are matching, then you know for sure you have congruent triangles. And so what you would write is a statement like that. That is called a congruence statement. All right, and we did all the matching up in here. Let's keep on moving. I'm going to go down to example 3. And I figured out a way to erase that, so I just did. So example 3, you can read it with me here. It says a brace is used to support a tree and help it grow straight. In the figure, triangle TRS is congruent to triangle ERS. And so the way that they put the letters is important to you. Angle, or letter T is first, angle, and letter E is first. So that means both of these angles have the same angle measure. So if T is 65 degrees, so is E. And same goes for angle R and R. Well, it looks like angle R in both triangles is the same angle measure, and then angle S. So it's kind of a funny statement, but TRS goes T to R to S, then back to T. And then ERS starts over here, goes to R to S, and down. So it's almost like you've unfolded a plane, paper airplane or something, and then what happens is it creates two angles up here that are congruent, two angles down here that are congruent, and then two angles down there at S that are congruent. And so we'll just look at the questions. Letter A says, at what angle is the brace placed against the ground? And so the brace is on the other side. So if angle T is 65 degrees, then angle E is also 65 degrees. And then letter B, what is the length of the brace? And it's showing you the brace right here. And basically common sense here would be to say, well, that's RT. It's congruent to RE. So if RT is 8 foot, then RE is also 8 feet. So they should match, right? They are corresponding parts and congruent side lengths. And that's all I got for you today. Peace out, homies.